I want to talk about why I think the jury are mostly to blame over the Lucy Letby miscarriage. It's not something that's said. Everyone likes to blame the defence lawyers. They're questioning why they only had one expert, and it wasn't a medical expert. It was the plumber talking about how the system's sewage was coming out the taps. But the reason I'm saying it's not a problem with the defence is you're in a system where you are innocent until proven guilty. So I would have actually been perfectly fine with the defence when it comes to their turn, for the lawyer to stand up and say no questions or anything, and not even bother giving a defence, because there just was no evidence presented by the prosecution in the first place. Obviously the reason there was no evidence presented is because none exists, because no murders actually happened. And I'm gonna hark back to the Daily Mail podcast, because at the time of the trial, that was my source. That was the only thing I was listening to. I wasn't reading any extra material, because at the time of the trial there hadn't been a miscarriage of justice yet. I was listening to the podcast just to try and understand, what had gone on. And during the podcast, after months and months, you've got Liz and Caroline covering the trial, and it was every couple of days they would release an episode. It might have even been once a week. It was over a year now. And I've said this before, but I was waiting. I kept waiting for some evidence to be presented, and I was wondering why they're wasting so much time, all these months and months going through personal messages to doctors, and hearing testimony from the mothers and other nurses about what she said, and just testimony of her doing her job, coming in and out of the room doing her job. And I was sort of wondering, God, when are they gonna get to the beef? And then all of a sudden it sort of came to an end, and they're coming up to the verdict, and I'm thinking, have I skipped a few episodes or something? I thought perhaps there was perhaps it just wasn't loading some episodes on the podcast or something, and I had to go back and double check, and I thought, maybe it's just a problem with the way they're covering it. Now, Caroline, or I think it was Liz, said, Liz Hull, who done the podcast, wrote in an article something about, the people who think she's innocent weren't there at the trial. Okay, well, they were covering the trial, and they were trying to tell us, trying to broadcast to us, report to us what went on in the trial. And if they're not telling us something, then that's up to them. So is there something that Caroline and Liz some sort of evidence, some smoking gun evidence that Caroline and Liz are withholding? Because I've got here after the verdict came out, I'm going to read here a message that I sent to my sister on the 3rd of September. So this was just over a week after the verdict. I think there was a good chance this was the worst miscarriage of justice ever. Also, her being a nurse, she'll probably be able to top herself. The problem is, people generally don't have a good understanding of maths and probability when all the evidence is just that she was on shift. If she is innocent, this is just awful. After the whole nation, newsreaders, etc., calls her the most evil person in history and given her life without chance of parole. So this was written before we heard any of the controversial evidence about the statistics not even being presented correctly. So this was before then. So if by the end of the trial, before I'd heard anything about the spreadsheet being misconstrued, about the data being wrong, I'm already thinking that there was no evidence of, that there was no evidence of any guilt, and all it was circumstantial, and that was she was on shift. That's before any of this, all of this other stuff has come out. Then doesn't that tell you that the problem wasn't with the way that the trial went? Because I thought she was innocent after the trial, before we've heard all of this additional evidence, or everything's been debunked. So that is why I'm saying, the jury are to blame and not the defence. And not just that, the reason I'm always slagging off Caroline and Liz is because they were at the trial covering it. I presume most of it. Maybe they missed a couple of days, and yet they are under the impression that she's guilty. So what is it that they know that they're withholding from us? Shouldn't they know better because they were at the trial? What is it that made them think that she's guilty, and yet their reporting of it has failed to give me any evidence of guilt? Do you see what I'm saying? So this is why I'm saying there's a problem with the jury, because I thought she was innocent. Well, I don't know her, but to me there was no evidence of guilt presented. Therefore, in the British legal system, it should be innocent until proven guilty. And I have to say, during the judge's summing up to the jury, I didn't once hear the mention of beyond reasonable doubt. That actually for some reason didn't seem to happen. Maybe they just didn't broadcast it. But from everything that I've read, the judge's direction to the jury was about if you believe she done one murder, you could assume she done the others, and you don't even have to be sure on the method of which she murdered them. I mean, what sort of direction is that for a judge to give the jury? It's a bit strange. I mean, surely the judge should have said to the jury, you need to be sure beyond all reasonable doubt and treat each of the cases individually. I mean, there wasn't enough evidence to convict her on one murder, let alone 7 or the 15 that they were trying to pin her for. So all of this stuff about defence being to blame and bad witnesses, bad spreadsheets, bad spreadsheet data, manipulated this, manipulated the jury for this, manipulated the jury for that. Well, I didn't think she was guilty, so the jury has made the mistake, not bad defence, cheating prosecution, corrupt judge. It's the jury to blame.